Hi, this is Joe again with another review. For the sake of this video, we're going to be discussing excuse me. We're going to be discussing the 2011 film Moneyball, starring Brad Pitt and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Of course, this movie is based on a true story and book about Billy Beane, who is a general manager of the Oakland A's. And Billy Beane in the film is played by Brad Pitt. And of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the then manager, Art Howe, who of course gets fired from Oakland. When he plays it, he quits, and he eventually becomes the manager of the New York Mets, which was a total disaster when he was here. But nothing here or there. Well, this movie is about a story about how Brad Pitt, or Billy Beane, builds up the Oakland A's into what I think eventually evolves into analytics in baseball, which is killing the game of baseball, in my opinion, with all the stupid shifts and everything else. But Billy Beane was the one who organized this thing. And that's because the Oakland A's is one of the lowest small budget teams out there. And it's funny because they come from California, and you figure, okay, a lot of people have money out there, but Oakland is a poor city. And they have a lot of slums, a lot of crime there. And it's because California is a sanctuary state. You have a lot of illegals in the Bay Area, particularly in San Francisco, but there's also nothing here or there. And Oakland is just across the bay from San Francisco, so you have a lot of crime there and everything else. And they don't have enough money or capital to compete with teams that spend over $100 million in the payroll, like the Yankees or the Red Sox do. So they have to compete with that, and the only way that Billy Beane could compete with that is if he gets guys on the team who constantly get on base, who even if they throw 100 pitches, but the fifth thing, if they could get guys out, he's not concerned about how many pitches they throw. He's concerned about how they could get guys out for the pitches and how many times they get on base. Doesn't matter if they walk a lot or if they get hits. As long as they get on base more than they make out or make it out, then they could probably be a successful team. And people thought they was nuts to know how that this system of his is not working, and it shows details over the 2002 season where his idea does not work. And one of the reasons is that he gets a particular excuse me. He gets a particular player named Scott Hatterberg, who was a former catcher, and his elbow is gone. He can't throw anybody out because he hurt his elbow to the point that he can't catch anymore. He's naturally have to throw the ball to second base to throw runners out or third base. And he hurt his arm so bad that he has nerve damage in his elbow, so he can't catch anymore. So he either has to retire or play another position. So Billy Beane believes that he can play first base. And Art Howe says, "Come on, this guy can't throw. He has a dead arm. He's useless to me." And Billy Beane goes, "Yeah, but he gets on base, and that's the type of players I'm looking for. It's the guy who's getting on base." And so Art Howe goes, "Oh, you're nuts, you're crazy," and they're always fighting whether or not to play this particular player, Hatterberg. So eventually, he trades. Billy Beane does. He trades the other player that Art Howe's been using all the time for first base. He trades him to Detroit and becomes a big star in Detroit. I forgot the guy's name. And I just watched the movie last night. I forgot the player's name. But he trades him to Detroit, so that way Art Howe will have no choice but to play Hatterberg, and which he eventually reluctantly, eventually does so, and he gets on. And he did what Billy Beane expected him to do, and then is constantly getting on base. And at one point in the 2002 season, the Oakland set a record, which eventually was broken by Cleveland. That's a couple of years ago. They won like 20 straight games in the American League, which is everybody's going, wow. Now all of a sudden this thing that Billy Beane is talking about is actually working, and they actually made it to the playoffs, but for the second year in a row. But unfortunately, they lost. And there was a time in the mid 2000s where Oakland was winning. I can think like 3 or 4 years in a row they came in first, but unfortunately, they couldn't win in the playoffs because they always would play the Yankees, or they would play the Red Sox, or they would play somebody who would always knock them off in the playoffs. Kind of like the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves won 14 division titles, but they won one World Series out of it because they kept getting beat by somebody, a team that was either better than they were, or a team that got hot at the right time. But unfortunately with Oakland, by the time they hit the playoffs, they got so exhausted by trying to make it into the playoffs that by the time they actually get there, they will lose in the first round of the playoffs, and that's what kept happening to this team. Of course, Oakland doesn't have the reputation of the Oakland A's teams in the early '70s when they won 3 World Series in a row. With Reggie Jackson and Cat Freshano teams, or the teams in the late '80s or early '90s went to the World Series 3 years in a row, but they only won 1 out of the 3. And they won a division a couple of times in the early '90s, but in '92, I think '92 was the last time they actually won the division, or their division, but they lost to the eventual world champion Blue Jays in '92, and they never really got back to the playoffs until I think like 2001, and that's where the movie picks up from. When they got knocked off in 5 games to the Yankees, and they actually had 2 games to none lead on the Yankees in the first round, and they ended up losing 3 straight, because that was the year that a lot of people wanted a New York team. Unfortunately, fortunately for me, it was the Yankees that they want to win because of 9/11. So, I think maybe that Oakland caved and decided to throw the series. A lot of people thought that they threw the series so that a New York team could hopefully get into the World Series, which eventually they did. But they lost to, of course, everybody knows they lost to Arizona in the World Series that year. But that's where the movie picks up, and Billy Beane tries to build this team up, and for a while he wasn't successful, and he was getting crapped on from everybody from this thing not being successful, and eventually it was successful for a time, but Oakland still never could get over the hump, and still has not won a World, and Oakland hasn't won a World Series now in 30 years. Since the Earthquake Series. That was the last time that Oakland actually won the World Series, and it's one of the longest streaks now. I think they have to be like a top 12 of teams of not winning a World Series for so long. The Mets are in the top 10 already because of that phony team in Chicago, the phony championship team from Chicago won, and of course the Red Sox won, and the White Sox finally won one. And the Giants finally broke their streak, so maybe about like 20 or 30 years, maybe Oakland will finally break that streak. As long as they end the stupid analytics crap, maybe they will have a chance to win. But since, like I said earlier, it's a certain market team and had trouble winning, and of course they did mention at the end of the film that they still have never won the last game of the season. And it's it's a sad situation what's going on with the Oakland A's right now, because I know they're trying to get a new stadium. The stadium they're playing was the Oakland Coliseum. The stadium, as I heard it, is falling apart, and then they're going to be, well, after next year in 2020, they're going to be the longest team not to host an All-Star game, because they haven't hosted an All-Star game since 1987, and that was an infamous All-Star game. So now Oakland's being treated like the Mets are right now. Been treated lousy. They make fun of this team because of the Moneyball philosophy that they have on the team. But for the movie itself, I know I haven't spent much on the movie. That's because the movie is not that. Even though the movie has gotten praise, I think it's got some Oscar nominations back then for the screenplay and stuff. But the movie itself, I mean, it is an interesting premise to tell this true story. Because most of the interesting baseball movies are based on a true story, but the movie is more behind the scenes stuff instead of focusing on the team. It's mostly Brad Pitt's performance in this movie, and the mathematician who graduated from like Yale has a degree in economics from Yale. Well, I mean, it's really these two guys' stories, and maybe or hell, that's it. That's the only three performances in this movie they're focused on, and not so much on the team, which is what the movie is really about. The Oakland A's of that time with the Moneyball situation, and they didn't really focus on in my opinion, they really didn't focus on the relationship between the management and the team, or the management with the town of Oakland, or trying to get a new stadium, which has been fighting for years. That's not brought up. Just how the team is built around this analytics stuff, or this Moneyball situation. Trying to get players on the cheap, players who are not that, they don't have, let's say, tremendous home run power or tremendous pitching performances, but what Billy Beane was looking into is how they get on base as a hitter, or how they get guys, or how efficiently they get guys out. And for a while, at least in Oakland anyway, it worked for a while, but not enough for them to win world championships or even get into the World Series, and it hasn't happened with Oakland. But maybe if it has happened, maybe the Oakland would have gotten a new stadium by now. If they'd gone into the World Series a couple of times with this Moneyball thing, or philosophy, or to probably even win the World Series or two, like they did back in the late '80s, then maybe they would have, this thing would have taken off even more for Major League Baseball. But it took several years. That's why every team has its philosophy with the Moneyball philosophy now. Even the Yankees have that now. And the Yankees always used to spend the most. But since George Steinbrenner died and his sons took over, they don't do that. Now they're going more on the analytics now. So is everybody else now, unfortunately. And the analytics ruined the game. But for Moneyball, it's really Brad Pitt's vehicle, really. And you see him just about every scene in the movie. And it's the guy who cheated. They're the guy, folks, who cheated on Jennifer Aniston. So, F you, Brad Pitt, just for that. But for the movie, if I gave a good performance, and it wasn't an interesting story, but me as a baseball fan, didn't really do anything for me though. I mean, I always wanted to see this movie. I saw it and I said, it's not that great. And if they focus more on the action on the field as much as they did with the action behind the scenes, I'm gonna say fine. But like I said, if Oakland actually won a World Series because of the Moneyball philosophy from Billy Beane, then maybe you'll see would be a more interesting story. Unfortunately, they only made the playoffs like 3 or 4 years in a row, and that was it. And then eventually they had to trade all the big players, or the big pitching side, like Mulder, and I think they had Tim Hudson, and another pitcher. They had 3 young guys, and eventually Tim Hudson went to the Braves, and I forgot where the other 2 pitchers went, but that's what happened. I know Tim Hudson went to the Braves, but he had to break the team up because they couldn't win because Oakland could not win the big one. But the movie itself, it's interesting for what it is. It's good for what it is, but it's not a great. To me, it's not a great baseball movie. Because I'm not a huge fan of Brad Pitt. That's probably that might be the reason for it. But I thought it was a good story, but not a fascinating one. So that's my review of the movie Moneyball. Please click on the video. Please rate it. Please subscribe to my channel. Please forward this video to your Facebook pages. You can check out all my reviews on my YouTube channel at rallyc.com. That's all WDY, rallyc.com. The whole page is Rally Reviewer Chris Lee Moore. And please check out all of his videos on his website. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.